All right, we are on another episode of Wicked Tuna Real Talk, the YouTube edition, as the captains are rewatching the first season. It's all now available on YouTube on the Wicked Tuna channel. And look who I have, the two frenemies themselves. I got .com, I got Marciano. What's up, guys? How are we?
Life is good.
Hey, life better be good. I mean, look, this is, you guys are killing it. The YouTube stuff is available. Everybody's out there watching it. And now, we get to see you guys catching big fish, 1,000-pounders in this episode. How about that? How rare is a 1,000-pounder?
Pretty rare on your boat.
Oh.
Yeah.
Starts early today. Starting early today.
I had to let that fly.
Yeah, gotta give you credit, though. Credit where credit is due.
Is there a secret to catching a bigger fish?
I'm going to say yes and no.
Look, there is a little bit of luck there, right? But knowledge helps, right? And if Dave or I may make decisions
where to fish,
where we may each based on what we think is there, and ultimately it comes down to if you catch one, you were right. If you catch a big fish, you were right.
We could go to places where there are big fish. We know where they roam. However, there's not many of them. So we know where there's smaller fish and some not so small fish, a little bigger, 400 or 500s, more plentiful. But if you want that big fish, if you're willing to take the gamble, you got to go to where they're at. Right. But there's not many of them.
Generally worth it? I mean, are you better off catching 1,000-pound fish or two 500-pound fish?
No, I'm going to say
consistency.
Consistency, yeah. I'd rather go with the smaller fish, more of a guarantee. Or I should say, not more of a guarantee, less of a risk. I'll say that. And the quality. Usually the bigger fish we catch are not big quality fish. There is
an ideal market size, right? And that ideal market size for the good money is, what would you say, 350 to maybe 450?
450 dress, yeah.
Right? That's kind of like the ideal size for the market for a lot of reasons. It's enough meat that the person who buys it can cut it and distribute it in a timely manner, right? Because let's face it, fish isn't a can of beans, right? It's got a shelf life of literally a matter of hours. So the person who buys it from us has got to get it all out through those distributions to the restaurants, to the markets, and every place else, all within a short period of time. Now, when you bring him a big, huge hunk of meat, that's just harder for him to accomplish.
But
right?
if there's not a lot of fish on the market and you're really willing to roll the dice on a place where there's less fish but bigger fish, that big fish can be a big score, knowing that the buyers don't have many fish.
Right.
So there's a strategy, outside of it, how much you may or may not get.
Well, so what's interesting here, I guess it now actually makes more sense, because as a viewer, I watched this episode. And, Kevin catches this 1,000-pound fish, and Dave, who could be a little competitive, I don't know if you guys know that at watching it, Dave's like, I'm going to catch a 1,000-pound fish, and he calls the producer, Mike, and he tells him that he's going to catch a 1,000-pound fish. And I'll admit, as a person who knows nothing about this, right, as a Guggen myself, I'm watching this going, how the hell could he do that? He's just going to go catch a 1,000-pound fish, and he willed it into existence? But there's something to it. Basically, what you were saying to him is, I'm going to go to a place tomorrow where I have a chance to catch a 1,000-pound fish.
That is correct. It really is. And I had the drive to want to do that.
Right.
As was evident by watching that episode.
If somebody else, if Kevin had never caught that 1,000-pound fish, is there any chance you would have gone there just to show everybody that you could catch a 1,000-pound fish?
I'll let you answer that one. You can answer my question. He knows what I'm going to say.
I don't know. No, probably he would have. He would have, if, Dave's consistent. Again, as long as I've known him, even when I didn't talk to him, he was a consistent producer. And, look, as a fisherman, there's a part of me that, I won't lie, it's not his boat. I envy his consistency. He's got a beautiful boat, sure, but I mean, to be a consistent producer, is in the fishing industry, it's a tough thing to produce.
It really is.
It really is. I know how much work it takes, and we have different means to different ends, and each of us are looking for different numbers when it all is said and done. Look, a more expensive boat, a bigger boat is more expensive to operate. There's a need for higher earnings, right? I mean, everything's a business when it comes down to it. So
That wasn't editing, though. You literally caught it the next day.
100%.
I mean, because
He did,
sometimes there's
100%,
editing.
yes.
But this
Yeah,
is, you said you would do it, and the next freaking day
look,
you caught it.
that's a classic walk the walk, or talk the talk. Is
That's
that what
pretty
they say?
badass.
And
When
walk
Kevin
the walk.
caught that
It
fish,
is.
I had the fire in my eyes. I wanted that 1,000-pounder, bigger than 1,000 pounds, bigger than Kevin, more so than anything else that was on the show yet. And we did it.
And did you think you would? When you told the producer you were going to do it, did you believe it yourself?
I had the drive to do it. I think we had the experience to do it. Were we going to do it at that point? Looking back, I wasn't sure, but I was being held to my
Sure,
word.
yeah,
there.
yeah.
That's almost 14 years ago. You're a young buck at the time, sort of.
Sort of.
Would you make that same proclamation today?
Yes. Yes. I
For
absolutely
anybody
would.
who's
He
not
would.
watching, if you're only listening to this
Of course he
episode
would.
and you're not watching, you got to see the look in Dave's eyes. It's hilarious. He is 100% confident in that answer. And honestly, I feel like I'm kind of pissing him off right now. And he's thinking like, I might have to go out and catch a 1,000-pound fish just to show this guy I can do it again if I want to.
And that's what it was. I'm not going to deny it. And we did it.
Is it any harder to bring in that fish? You guys have talked about the difference, and we'll get into it in a later episode, between knowing where the fish are and then actually bringing them in once you catch them. Is it harder to bring in a fish that's that large?
As on the rod and reel, or bring them into the boat?
No, both. Okay, both. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no. Some of the easiest battles that I've had, and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure
yeah,
with
yeah.
him, have been, the 900s. Our biggest fish to date on the .com was just over 1,200. I mean, Paul and I and Sandro, one day we caught 2 giant tuna over 1,000 pounds back to back. The first one took 20 minutes, and the second one only took 5 minutes. And we're in comparison, or in contrast to a smaller fish, 400 or 500 pounds. Those are some of the most epic battles that I've had, and I know I'm going to speak for you too, that he's had also. We fought fish half the size for 5 times as long. We fought fish. My longest battle was 12 hours, and from where we hooked up to where we finished was 18 miles away.
And that makes sense though when you think about it. Look,
Young bucks.
those big fish, these fish live to be 35 years old. Those big giant ones, are at the end of that range. They're big, they got power, but they don't have stamina. You're catching those 500-pound fish, and if you watch us all on the show, anytime one of us has fought a fish for some ungodly length of time, it's never a 1,000-pounder. It's always those 500-pound fish because they got the stamina. They're the teenagers. They just don't quit sometimes.
Well, and I do think it's very inappropriate that you would talk about Monty this way, though, being at the end and kind of giving up and not having all that fight left in him. It's very
Big,
inappropriate, but
fat.
terrible the way you guys talk about these other captains. Small thing that occurs in this episode is the Coast Guard showing up and boarding the .com, and you have a line at the beginning like, "Oh no, another violation" or something like that. Is that normal?
I haven't had a violation.
Okay,
I don't
good.
know.
Or maybe you say something along those lines of, "Oh, here we go again." So it happens a lot.
We get boarded on my boat, your boat probably. I get boarded at least twice a year. Twice a year. They're not looking for anything really illegal. They're just coming on boat just to make sure you're complying with all your commercial safety gear, life
They heard
jackets.
about the tuna.com. They know that guy catches little fish. So they,
Is that true for every boat, though? I mean, they're out there. You
Yeah,
guys see
it's
one or two
every boat.
it's
times a
random.
year.
That's what keeps everybody compliant.
You don't know
That's
when.
what keeps everybody honest. And let's face it, the Coast Guard doesn't really belong there checking fisheries regulations.
Somebody else should be doing that.
Their mission number one,
See.
I believe if you ask them, is saving lives. And I think that's what they would prefer to be doing. But then again, they're a federal agency. These are federal regulations. They're the only federal body out there. So, it kind of, all of a sudden they wind up doing double duty. They're going to check our safety gear. If we do have catch, they'll throw the measure tape on the catch. But much respect to those guys. They got a job to do too. And, someone's giving them orders that we want. Well, I don't know how it all works, right?
No.
Is it a quota, or does somebody say that boat over there or this boat over there? But it's all random.
How often do you end up with seeing somebody who does get a citation, who
It
does
happens.
get something?
It
Is that
happens.
common?
If they're coming into a fleet with 20, 30 boats, they'll board almost all of them.
Yeah.
But occasionally you'll see them following someone home if they find a violation where their life raft is out of date. it's out of service, they cannot just send them home alone.
Well, it's
Because-
three. You got three. If they terminate your trip, if they find more than 3 infractions, they'll give you time. I know because I've been written up. All right.
Boy, are we all surprised.
Why are we not surprised? But no, look, for me, I don't always have the money, to get my raft packed. Can be from $1,600 to $1,800,
Oh, yeah.
and we have to have it repacked, just like your car. You have to have an inspection sticker every year, right? And I'll admit, there's been years I didn't have the $1,800, till I get out there and went fishing a little bit to have the money to pack my raft. It's not a complaint. That's just the reality. Now, if you had just the raft, they wouldn't terminate your trip. If they terminate your trip, they will escort you home, and you can't leave the dock till you get all the items
Become
on their
compliant
list.
again.
And it's usually, if you have 3 infractions, right? If your raft might be out of date, they're going to give you 30 days to get it up to date. And if you don't do it, then there'll be a financial fine penalty. That's the way that the citation will write. And then, we have EPIRBs, we have other things in safety gear. And if you had 3, I think it's 3, checks. You get 3 checks in the wrong boxes, they're going to terminate your trip. And that hasn't happened to me yet. They haven't terminated my trip, but I've been written, and again, they give you a period of time.
Sure.
I think it's usually 30 days. Hey, get your raft done. Hey, get your fire extinguishers up to date. You have 30 days to document it, and it's a matter of showing a receipt. Hey,
Yeah.
got it done.
Do
and
they?
you send it
It's
in.
like a fix-it ticket.
Yeah.
Do they appreciate how messy all of your stuff is and all of the different, everything being in a different
Well-
spot as opposed to Dave and his nice clean
No,
book where everything is
I will
laminated?
say one
It is
thing,
both,
right?
yeah.
Because
Three-ring
of all
binder.
my years being active in fisheries management at the level of Fisheries Management Council, I work very close with the representatives from the Coast Guard that work with the industry and the council, right? So, look, I haven't where it counts. I do have a nice, neat book like Dave. I open my book, all the permits are in there, the date of my last inspection, the date of my any violations I may have that I did get, and any violations with safety. We haven't had a fisheries violation, right? But doing what I do year round for so many years, you have times where everything's perfect and you get written up for something, this or that, and look, if you have a history of it, they'll get you
Oh,
out.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because all they have to do is sanction your permit. If they sanction your permit and prevent you from fishing, my boat just became worthless. And even though it's only worth 1/10 of what the tuna.com is, but look, that's everything for me. I'm out of a job.
Right.
Not only is my boat worthless, I'm unemployed. So we take that stuff seriously.
You could be a flight attendant for me. You do pretty well at that.
I could be a mechanic. I'll let you fix your
You can come
brakes.
on the airplane. You can come
I'll
serve
take care of
drinks
your
in the back of
brakes
the
later
airplane.
tonight, Dave. I'll give you a brake
I think
job.
the brakes are one thing. I think it's more some of the other things that make the plane fly in the air that I'd be a little bit more worried about if I were
Well, that's
Dave.
right. I'm going to save the plane by taking care of the pilot's brakes.
Yeah. You know those guys? Do you get to know the Coast Guard guys at all? I mean, you're seeing all
Yeah,
the same
absolutely.
people,
You
and
see
in
'em.
some ways, you guys are all
We
up
see them in
against the same
town. This
stuff.
is a small. They're right over here.
The Coast Guard's right next door, right?
Yeah.
Where are they? They're right on the other side of that building. We're filming. That's their main base.
Group of guys and gals. We see them in town at restaurants. They're down at the dock getting fuel. We say hello. Yeah, they're great people.
There's a lot of them on the boat. There were like, what, 6, 8 people on the boat?
Yep. They have their regular crew. Then they probably have people in training on
Training,
the boat,
yeah.
shadowing. So yeah, it's doing what they have to do.
Yeah, well, I guess better to see them doing that than needing to be rescued.
Correct.
Right? I mean,
Exactly.
like that's kind of as much as I'm sure it's an annoyance to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to deal with it to an extent. Rather see them doing that than actually
Exactly.
the thing that they're most out there.
And
for.
occasionally, at times, when they're on the boat, we've hooked up. Little raft goes away, and the Coast Guard gets to sit there and watch the whole battle.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They like that?
Yeah, they love it.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
Super entertaining for them.
Yeah.
They get the front row seat just like we all do with these cameras. All right. So another thing that happens in this episode is Joe. We get to see a little bit of Joe, which is cool.
My son, yeah.
Yeah, your son Joe, and both on and off the boat, right? We get to see him playing
Yeah.
some football and playing what for Beverly High
Beverly
there.
High School, yeah.
All right, and he looks pretty good in his uniform. He's running
Yeah.
around. I don't know whether there was like a future career in the NFL necessarily, but he was out there doing his thing, which is great.
No, he was like, I was always proud of Joe. He had a balance I never had.
Uh-huh.
I had my first job in a boat when I was 11 and never looked back. I went to work when I was 11 years old, right? Joe loves the boat and fishing with me, his dad, right? But he also loved his time with his friends. He played on all the sports teams. Like, I always admired him for having that balance I never had.
Yeah.
You know, because there's part of me that regrets. You know, I didn't play sports. I didn't go to proms. I was working. I was fishing.
Yeah. Well, you need a date to go to the prom.
Well, yeah.
You didn't go to your prom? I went to the junior and senior prom.
It's all right.
You never had a date. Come on.
I'm married for 35 years now.
Not since high
with
school.
With a family of 3. You're telling me
Let me do the
I
math
didn't have a
here.
date. Wait. Now we're going to start talking about body counts before I got married?
That's a different.
Exactly.
That's a different YouTube
Listen,
show. That's a very different YouTube show.
That's a whole new show named Wicked Tuna about a bunch of sketchy Boston brides.
Yeah,
Next question.
You were gonna just move.
Let's
All right,
move
touch
on.
this
Moving
one
along. You
anymore.
want to go down that road?
No, I really
You
don't.
want to stay here?
No, not at all. I don't want to go down any
Get
further.
your
at
mind
all.
out of the gutter.
Yeah, all right.
While you're down
Time.
there, grab mine. will
I
you?
was just, curious about these proms that you
So this is where you wanted to
missed.
go.
Well,
How do we get from talking about 1,000-pound tuna to prom?
because Joe at least had a date to his prom,
Yes,
which
all
was
right,
nice.
all right.
Lucky Joe, and he didn't have to be here to witness all of this. As a dad,
Yeah.
is it to look back and see him, and your other
Yeah.
kids are in this as well, but specifically
Yeah,
Joe, we
yeah,
can talk
yeah.
about them also. To look back and see him at that age, just
Yeah.
starting to come out on the boat for Wicked
Yeah.
Tuna. I know he'd probably
Yeah.
been out there
Yeah.
before. Does that hit you a little bit?
Oh yeah, come on, it was cool. One thing, Joe, and it's kind of true. Again, it's kind of true. Joe didn't fish with us all the time, but a high percentage of the time Joe set foot on the boat, we caught a fish. So in Wicked Tuna world, and I think it plays out over the next few seasons as well as this first one, Joe became our good luck charm. And even the fans picked up on that.
Mm-hmm.
They saw Joe in the boat, they knew we were going to get a fish this episode. And it just really kind of did play out that way. Like, that's what's cool about this whole experience to this Wicked
And
Tuna.
you guys did catch pretty much every time he was on, right?
Yeah. Almost without fail.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of true to life. It was the same way. Look, when we caught our biggest fish, our 1,200 pounder, it was me, Jay, and Joe in the boat
Yeah.
on one of the rare days. It was the 3 of us together. They've always been lucky.
Yeah, I think it was in the first episode we talked through some of the management of being a captain versus just sort of helping those guys to grow and the young people to grow. Is there any challenge at all when your regular first mate is your nephew and then every once in a while your son comes out there?
Oh yeah, and when they were that young, it wasn't too bad because Jay was always 5 or 6 years older than Joe, right? So there's an age gap, and Jay's mom used to watch the kids when my wife did work a few days a week at the hair salon. She was a hairstylist.
She did a heck of a job with you.
Oh yeah. Well, you can see. Look, I'll tell you. Believe it or not, there was a time I looked like a young, handsome Jesus Christ, right?
Not for your prom, you
In the '80s, to be fair, the mullet was in.
Oh.
And I had one, but
you
down to
had
my
a mullet?
shoulders. I wore my baseball cap, but the brim was curled, right? And and then after we got married a few years, she's a hairstylist. I got sick of her saying, you should do this with your hair and touching my hair. And so I went and fixed all that. I was too busy fishing. I just wanted to be left alone.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and Joe's grown up now, right? I mean,
Yeah,
so
he's
this is the
grown
other
now.
thing. When we see him here, he's young. He's just kind of starting
Yeah,
to help
yeah,
out
yeah.
on the boat. He's a good luck charm. He goes on to become a captain, right?
Yeah.
And you've told us he's doing some cool stuff in Long Island.
Yeah, yeah.
Working on some yachts and stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
how much did he learn and how much did you teach him over the years?
Well, look, I taught him the basics just like I taught Jay, right? And what was nice, and we don't get to see it, we do see it in some of the seasons. I taught them the basics and they ran with it. They knew how to get the boat in and out safely, right? That's
Most
the
important
basics.
thing.
And they knew how to go catch a few fish. And ultimately, there was times when I wasn't around, and every time those boys had an opportunity to show they can do it without me, they never script away from that, and they went out there and made it happen.
Yeah.
And I think we'll see there's several highlights over all the seasons where you'll see that they come into their own as captains and crew. And then, you know, again, what's really great about Joe is, look, I showed him fishing, and I do miss him on the boat now fishing these days. But again, with like this gig he's got in Long Island, I mean, that's a legitimate job. He's going to be learning and doing things that I could never teach him. I actually dreamed about doing stuff like that when I was his age, when I was much younger. But, you know, all of a sudden life happens, you get married, you have kids, and, you know, running yachts around the country isn't part, you know, I wouldn't be married if I was jumping on yachts all around the country right now, right?
.com, you don't have kids. You're married, no kids. Do you have other members?
No one ever told you how?
What? Okay.
We've already established.
Keep it going.
We've already established that there's only one biologist among you. Is there?
Would you like me to explain it to you?
I went to the prom. Go on.
We don't want to know how that night ended. Are there other members of your family that you'll take fishing? Will you go out with other family members?
You know, my dad back in the day, but
Yeah.
he's no longer with us.
A little bit of fur
He
around.
passed away a few years ago, but you know, we did a lot of fishing together. You know, when he taught me how to fish,
Yeah.
and he did come saltwater fishing with me. My brother also worked with me on the boat way back when, and you know, that's about it. But I spent a lot of time on both freshwater lakes and the ocean fishing with my dad.
Is it harder at times, do you think, to be around family and have some of those same pressures, but with family? You're almost mixing family and business together.
No, I mean fishing with both my dad specifically was more just for fun.
Right.
It wasn't commercial fishing. We weren't selling tuna. It was just fun fishing, again, on the lake and on the ocean on our you know, my dad's boat. My dad never really was involved in the commercial fishing. I branched off into that, you know, when after my dad and I stopped fishing together.
Okay.
My brother and I, we fished on the same boat, and that was a party boat. Dave worked on a party boat. I worked on a party boat, and my brother worked with me, where we would take people fishing, you know, for a day, 3/4 day or all day, 7 hours or 10 hours. And we worked together there. But no, we never butted heads. That was just, you know, more of a fun environment. Definitely not as stressful as what we do now.
I don't want to dig too deeply into your personal life at all, but do you wish at times that you had a kid to take fishing and kind of pass some of this on to?
Yeah, you know, I can't look back, you know, but, you know, I mean, I am here now. I'm married. I don't have any kids, but yeah, I wish I had that, my son or my daughter to fish with, but I don't have that. But truthfully, I look at Sandro as my son on the water. You know, he started with me when he was in his early teens.
That's why he has
in
a
his
$2
late
million
teens.
boat, though. No
Yeah.
kids, no wife.
Yeah,
That was-
Right?
yeah.
Right.
But I look at Sandro as my kid on the water. You know, we just started when he was super young.
Yeah.
And I just like Dave said with Joe and Jay, you watch them mature, you watch them find their way, you watch them take what you taught them and run with it
Right,
and
right.
expand
And
with
that's
it.
true. And yeah,
You can't.
we've watched that.
I've had deckhands before Sandro that you teach them something and they can't run with it, and it just doesn't work. Both, you know, but Sandro and even Jordy, you know, they were able to take that knowledge and make it better and make
Yeah.
it work. And you can't say
excel
that for
at it.
everybody.
Do you think of Paul almost like your son also?
Paul, you know, Paul and I were brothers that fought. We'll call it that.
Dave, how proud are you of your kid?
Wonderfully proud. Yeah, of course. Right, him and again, Jay, who's not my son, but like, and I totally identify with Dave. Like, you know, I don't know if you remember, Dave, but one time it was Sandro was very young, and you called me, and Sandro had a big fish, and he couldn't get it started. And like that was like the first time you let him take the boat, and I remember you were worried about him. No, I don't want to say you were worried about him. It was like, oh, he can't seem to get the fish in. You know, something was going on. It was taking longer. It was just one of those 500-pound tough ones. And I just remember you calling me concerned about how it was going to work out. Not thinking it was
And I
going to
was.
fail, right? But it's like, can you see what's going on? You know, because you were flying or something or doing something, right? And but again, it turns out Sandro got that fish. And, you know, now Sandro, again, is every bit the competitor you were. You know what I mean?
And it's worth saying,
feels-
he's a captain now too.
Yeah,
I'm not sure
Oh, yeah.
everyone realizes that, but
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
also grown up to become a captain.
And now he's becoming an airline pilot. on
Is he
top of it.
really?
Yeah.
He really is following
Yep.
in your
Yes,
footsteps.
he is.
Is he in the will?
Actually, yes, he is.
Am I in the will?
Sandro,
get the boat?
Hey, wait a
Sandro
minute.
isn't. No, you don't get the boat. You get to go to
I don't want
you
the
get to
boat.
go to my
I
funeral.
don't want the boat. I would like cash. Like help a guy out.
We're gonna have to get it from Sandro. The boat is in the will, and it does go to Sandro.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Wow. Does he know that?
But there's a clause in there that if him and I are on a fishing trip and the boat comes back without me,
Oh, yeah,
he
yeah.
doesn't get the boat.
Did you really put that in there?
No.
You should have. You gotta be careful about those things.
I gotta-
Come to an untimely
I have
end.
Sandro's number.
Yes, you can't have it though.
Does he know that? Does he know he's in the will?
He does.
Okay, good.
He does.
Thought maybe
I
we
would
were
love.
breaking
I
news
may
here.
not be here, but I would love to keep the boat going.
That's pretty amazing, though, and to have developed a relationship that's that close over the years. That's pretty cool, and obviously he must have done quite a bit to earn your trust.
He did, and you know what? He's done a fantastic job. Just I've never trusted anyone more so than I've trusted him,
It's really nice. That's a really nice story. I like that.
and I think he'll make a hell of an airline pilot.
We've talked a lot in the past about some of the roles you guys play, and .com, you get sort of stuck into this role of everybody hates you and everybody's rooting against you all the time. Obviously, Marciano is this blue collar guy you can root for. Has he told you at all how much he needs fishing in order to put food on his table? He's
Oh,
mentioned
yeah.
it once or twice here. I don't know.
Mentioned it a few
I wasn't sure
times.
if he's ever mentioned that you should have some sympathy for him because otherwise he won't be able to feed his poor family. What about the roles of Ralph and Pirate? We get to see a little of them here.
It's painful to watch.
Is it?
Yeah.
Why?
It's just, I mean, again, there's always going to be conflicts on a boat. You have two people in a
Let me
confined
just stop you
space.
quickly because people should know Pirate did pass away.
He did.
fairly
Yeah.
recently as well. I mean,
couple
just a
weeks
couple
ago.
of weeks before we're taping this, so maybe it's a little fresh also, and I'm sure that also makes it a little hard to watch. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, just it's hard to watch. I mean, we don't really know Pirate that
Right,
well,
right.
but for the few times that I've met him, he just seems to be a genuine person that was just looking for a place in life. He loved to fish, as Ralph said, and it's just, I've yelled at my mates, you've yelled at yours, but it's just hard to watch. Pirate become demoralized. But I mean, he really wasn't up to speed
Because
for
his
Ralph. It's
intentions
just-
were good. Yeah, like that's it. His intentions were good. I don't know.
Tensions were
But
good, but it didn't work.
Just like to try to be fair, right, Dave? Things happen on your boat, and we often don't see the whole
Correct.
story,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even I don't know the whole story all the time. So maybe there was something to that too. I mean, that's what kind of I try and think to put it on maybe there's something we didn't quite know about.
There
or we
might have
didn't
been
know
more.
the whole story.
I've
But it
covered.
was hard to see that.
I've covered Ralph in some detail with Marciano. I got to get your take on Ralph. Obviously, Dave's not a big fan, and he's pretty open and honest about it, other than keeping this one small part of it to himself. How do you feel about Ralph?
I mean, I will give credit where credit's due, and I think Ralph is an incredible fisherman. He's fishing on a small boat, hardcore. He's caught a lot of fish in the past. I'll give him that. And as for the show, outside of fishing, I think he was great for the show. I mean, he was fun to watch in many ways. But I think he was just a little hard on his crew. But again, I've been hard on my crew too. Sometimes you don't see it. And I've had deckhands before Sandro. Not that I was really hard on him, but I had to let go. It's hard to, someone doesn't work out, to let him go. And Ralph had to do what he had to do there. It just wasn't working. But overall, I think Ralph, again, was a great fisherman. And, he caught a lot of fish. I mean, but he wasn't the nicest towards me, towards Dave, and a lot of others on the show. We all did have some issues with him.
Well, and you're from
Some more so than-
New Jersey, so that's sort of ruining my theory. I thought it was just a Boston-New York conflict with the New Yorker coming up here to Gloucester, but maybe it's just him.
Ralph could be very confrontational.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. And you would agree with that.
Is that rare or is that common among the fishing fleet?
I'm going to say it's common with certain people,
Okay.
not everybody.
Meaning there's a small
like,
group
if
that's
you
not a
said
common,
no.
but there's a few
No,
people that are.
look, I'm sorry. Even when I didn't know Ralph, right? I mean, there's guys out there I don't like, and
But you can get along
I'm
with
sorry, they do their thing, I do my thing. We don't have any confrontation. Ralph was known
it. To poke the hive.
to just like literally, like there was way down off of Chatham, way before Wicked Tuna. One time we're down there fishing in Chatham or whatever, and this guy starts driving around me in circles, screaming at me, just like I had no idea who he was. And all we did was we just landed a fish or something, and we weren't anywhere near him the whole freaking time. But no, all of a sudden this lunatic's driving around and screaming at me, and to this day I never knew what for. And it turns out years later, all of a sudden I find out it was, that guy was Ralph in the Odyssey, right? And it just all those years I never. But he would yell at other people. He would yell,
he's known
once
for
again,
it.
we got the reputation on the show. What you see is what you get, right? You know what I mean? It's not like anybody's directing us. What you see is what you get, and just again, the problem with Ralph and I is maybe he was used to intimidating people, and I'm not easily intimidated. So
Well, neither of you are. I'm
you
almost
put him and I in the
surprised.
same room, and it doesn't work out.
I'm almost surprised, Dave, that you didn't end up in more of a confrontation with Ralph, because you don't back down.
You haven't seen it. It wasn't on the show.
It wasn't on the show.
But see, Dave, that's where his pilot training comes in. He's a consummate professional, right? He's an airline pilot, and that's exactly who I want flying the plane, right? You don't want a guy like me who flies off the handle flying the plane.
What happened?
I've had at least 2 confrontations with Ralph after we were done filming, after the season was over, and then after the show was over, down in Cape Cod. Just, it was on the radio, just calling up, saying I shouldn't be here, get out of here, you don't belong here, you shouldn't be fishing anyway. It just came to words, and that was twice.
Yeah.
But nothing more than just him yelling on the radio and screaming and me turning down the volume. That's just the way he is.
Yeah.
That's just in his DNA.
Well, it's probably for the best that you've got some of that anger management training you must need on an airplane in order to fly it pretty well. And thankfully, I've been trained the same way. It's the only way I can handle these guys for a full half hour doing these real talks. You guys, you don't need anger management training just to watch. You can do it all on YouTube. You don't have to take any classes. It's very easy. You just go to the Wicked Tuna channel on YouTube, and you can watch all the old episodes, season 1 all the way through. You can watch them rewatching season 1, and those are really fun. They're funny, like laugh out loud funny at times. And then hopefully you enjoy more of these real talks. This was number 5, and we got a whole bunch more to go.